Good afternoon and welcome into the podcast today, the Digital Revenue Podcast. This is your host, Jake Jordan, and I've got with me today Kyle Trafton. Kyle, how you doing?
I am doing great, man. Thanks for having me on the show.
Absolutely. Glad to have you. Tell us a little bit about what you are doing SML Excel.
That's right. SML Excel, small, medium, large, extra large, content for all sizes.
Cool.
So what we do over here, we are a kind of a digital first talent agency, record label, mostly working with a lot of just different kinds of music talent and any kind of content creators. We work a lot in the Christian CCM space, and we work with Goatee Records, which is Toby Mac's record label. Mm-hmm. And then in my background, I work with a lot of different independent artists as well, across here in Nashville and across the United States.
Awesome. Cool. So you guys are in Nashville?
Yeah, we're based out here. Mm-hmm.
Cool. So that's definitely one of the music hubs, right? So it's a perfect place for you.
It's the third coast is what they call it. So it's it's kind of funny because Nashville's starting to grow in tremendous ways as a city, but everyone's moving out here. So it's kind of funny. It's like you have a lot of LA people, a lot of New York people, and they get out here and they buy all this land and they're like, they don't know what to do with themselves. It's really quite funny.
Well, you've made it when there's a TV drama about Nashville.
That is true. Not only that, it gets canceled and then gets picked up by CMT, who's also here.
That's right. That's funny. Cool. So what's your role specifically on digital from a day-to-day?
So what my role here is I oversee all the digital for our artists. And that includes from socials to media buying to even actually the sales aspect of on the digital side. So we work with all the different DSPs, all the different big companies like Spotify and Apple Music and all those places. And where my specialty really lies is in YouTube.
Okay.
And so I've been in the YouTube world, in the YouTube ecosphere for several years now, and started off just basically helping artists make money in YouTube. And that sparked into a whole different other usage across the music industry and content worlds on how to actually monetize your all the content that you own and rights management.
Right.
So that's what I do. I help them grow their audiences and I help them monetize their audiences. Those are really the two key factors of what I do.
Great. And YouTube's a big, wide world that a lot of people haven't even touched yet. I think you guys are kind of front runners on the artist side, right?
Yeah, man. We, a lot of people are playing the game. A lot of people are in the game. They think they're playing the game.
Sure.
And just because they have content out there. So what we have actually learned is that there are a few key things that you actually can do to boost your revenue. And that YouTube, though people say, oh, you can't make money at it, or it's horrible money, or whatever that looks like, we actually make a decent amount of revenue off of our videos and the content that we own.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Cool. So just kind of going with that theme on the YouTube side, is that something that you guys have really worked on in the past year as a focus for yourself and your artists?
Yeah. So I would say that's one of the main things that I try to do whenever I'm working with a company. So I work with a handful of other different companies outside of SML Excel, mostly media companies. And so we always start with YouTube rights management. So YouTube rights management is if you don't have your rights being managed, if you don't have your rights under control, you don't have a good baseline. You don't have a good just bed. So, Goatee's catalog was with a very large aggregator. And when I looked at the numbers of what they were doing through YouTube, I said, I think we can do better if we bring this in house. And so we actually brought it all in house. We got them all set up, got the platform started to build. And we definitely, in some cases, we increased our revenue by 300%.
Wow. Cool. So for someone who's not heavy on content, like you guys have artists cranking out stuff all the time, it's kind of just like a lifestyle for them, right? Anymore is they're videoing everything they're doing all the time, or somebody's videoing them. What does that look like for more like the everybody else who's not an artist?
Yeah.
From the YouTube side.
So we definitely have like you said, we have content. And so whether that is them actually creating new video content or us taking their music and making new content out of that, whether that's a music video to audio videos is what we call them. But for other people, man, I think the misconception is that the more views you get, the more money you get. Mm-hmm. There's a little bit of truth to that, but really how YouTube works is 100% off of watch time. So how much engagement are you actually going to get off of your video actually dictates the amount of ad revenue in which they start running against your content. Exactly. So I would say for anyone who's doing this, man, it's consistent content. It's as much as consistent content as you can actually produce, then that's how you're going to win. Because if you are pushing out consistent and you're pushing out content that your fans are really wanting and listening to, if you're listening to your fans, then you're actually going to kind of continue to grow that. And, it really doesn't take a whole lot. And I'm a firm believer in the 1,000 superfan method and thinking, to where if you have 1,000 super fans, you actually can make a really good living. Right. Because it only takes about those 1,000 to spend about $100 a year with you, and that $100 actually might be spent in watching YouTube videos. It might be using their social currency of watching it, and there's eyeballs. They don't know they're giving that, but they are. Mm-hmm. It might be something like that.
Mm-hmm. That's great. I like the parallel to just being content and it being about quality and consistency. Because really, Google search is the same way anymore. It comes down to engagement, right? It used to be keywords, and now it's click-throughs and lack of bounces and page depth and stuff like that, right? So it's no different since YouTube is owned by Google. And what's interesting is I remember talking with somebody who was a big YouTube guy, and he was saying that a lot of those covers of popular songs by up-and-coming artists was a huge monetary piece for them for that very reason. It's because people love covers, especially by someone they feel like they're discovering with YouTube.
Yeah. What's interesting is that I think what YouTube has really done for things like the music industry or the entertainment industry at large is that it's breaking away from this mentality of you have to sell a particular product to you're selling as Gary Vaynerchuk would put it, you're day trading your audience. Mm-hmm. So you're building this audience in order to sell against that audience in which you had actually collected. So it's all about advertising. Right. And that's really kind of one of the hard things that we always run into when we're trying to explain YouTube to the music industry or anyone in the entertainment industry, is that they're so used to, I click this and I get X for my piece of content. And now it's so much more about, if you click that, an ad runs and that ad actually pays you X. So you actually need to make sure you're making better content so you actually get better ads and better engagement. So it's a very different parallel. Mm-hmm. And I just went totally blank on what next thing I was going to say. So
that's all good, because I already had a question for you. Because if you have people who are brands that are comfortable creating content, I think that was a nice kind of framework of understanding what to concentrate on is not just growing viewership, it's growing the amount of time engaged of those viewers, which is something everyone should be doing across marketing, because it works everywhere. Right. But what about people? What would you say kind of the biggest challenge jumping into that pool in the deep end? It feels like for a lot of brands trying to come up with engaging content on video.
Yeah, because it's completely hit or miss. Yep. And it is I think the biggest misconception is making sure you have the right expectations going into this, mm-hmm. because like you said, you're talking about your YouTuber that you talk to. I work with a lot of big YouTubers, and some of them are really, really close friends of mine, and a lot of them do covers, things of that sort. And that's not what makes their money. It's the brand deals is what makes their money. Mm-hmm. And so even going to this, like you start talking about brand deals, you start talking about, revenue generating content for these other brands. the expectation then becomes, man, I want making 6 figures every single year off our brand deals. Well, you got to build up to that. You got to really build an engaged followership. And I think setting those expectations at the very beginning on how hard it is to actually work. YouTube's a lot harder than people think. It's not just pointing a camera up and here are the videos. So now I'm going to go make some money.
Right.
It is seriously garnering an audience who really devours your content.
Mm-hmm.
And that is actually how you be successful and make money. And I can't name a single successful, I would say, social influencer who got into this whole world just to make money.
Right.
Every single one of them got into it. That really successful ones got into it because it was something they're passionate about, and that was the drive. And the money came later. And
right.
It looks like it came, this past year from them working so hard, but it really came from the past 8 years of them working really hard.
Right. Exactly. I think that's where Gary Vee is a good example of.
Right.
He cranked and cranked and cranked and cranked, and he talks about it very openly, kind of part of his brand. Yeah. So would you say for sure that there's specific industries outside of, entertainment that are good avenues for brands to be in, that like to jump into YouTube and really spend some time?
Oh, completely. First off, I think I have a lot of theories on where everything's headed, and so you're gonna get one of them right here. So okay. I believe, and we're actually seeing it. We're seeing the mergers of media at the moment.
Right.
The past couple of years. So you're not just seeing. You don't just sit down to your television and watch a show. You actually have so much. You have a lot more engagement and so many of the cross. All right. Let's take a step back. A lot of the artists that I end up working with, especially on the independent side, the first conversation I have with them is that the idea of the music artist is dead. Mm-hmm. You're an entertainer now.
Right.
And I'd say it's the same for brands, is that if you're going to try to play this game, play it.
Publisher. Yeah, you're a publisher now.
You're a publisher, and play this game well, because it's not about selling your product. At the end of the day, obviously it is, but it's with that engagement of socials and YouTube and one other side note, I hate calling YouTube a social network because I don't believe it really is.
No.
There's a social aspect to it, but it's a platform for people to actually
consumption.
Yes, exactly. For consumption, for content consumption. Yeah. So, but it gets lumped into everything. So
it does.
You have to. So when brands start playing the whole game and is consistently buy, I mean, once again, Gary talks about this all the time. But the whole buy aspect, and we deal with this on the artist side a lot. Because it's like, hey, my tours are going on now. Hey, go buy my record. Hey, my new single, my new music video. You're not really having much engagement on the human level.
Sure.
And what I love about, I think where brands can actually really sit is that if they can actually find someone to help them manage their human level of the brand and the engagement of that,
right?
Then they'll see a lot of success because it's all about that audience and garnering that audience.
Right. Was already seeing that kind of chief brand officer role start to creep in a lot of the big brands, just whether it's.
Yeah, but I think that starts off as, people think that it's just the socials, but it is such a broader thing than that.
Sure.
We're getting to a point in the psychology. So now we're getting to like the whole psychology of the consumer. Uh-huh. So in the psychology of the consumer, we're in a day and age where the idea of identity is a huge. First off, a lot of millennials don't have identity. Mm-hmm. They have an identity crisis in the physical world. Mm-hmm. So in the digital world, I actually can go through and create my own identity.
Right.
So whatever I attach myself to, whatever I like, whatever all those kinds of things is the makeup to everyone else in the world.
Sure.
Saying this is actually who I am and my brand is. And so if I want to be a part of a certain clique or a certain group, I like the same thing. Mm-hmm. So if all my friends over here like Dove body wash, I'm going to like Dove body wash too, because I don't want to be left out.
Right.
So in that mindset, of content creation for brands. It is developing out niche audiences that really they can attach their identity to your brand.
Mm-hmm.
And with that, you're actually going to see an increase in brand loyalty and the lifetime consumer because I believe in this brand. But that's the psychology behind it.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think with when you're talking about, chief content officer, content officer, all those kinds of things, they are really audience. They should be all 100% about the audience and almost the psychology of what they're trying to deliver out versus how much content can we crank out because content, we always say content is king.
Mm-hmm.
And there's truth to that, but I've really come to the realization that content's really not king. It's audience that's king and that engagement that's king.
Mm-hmm.
And so the content's the gateway to that, obviously, so you need to continue to create content.
Mm-hmm.
But it is, if you're not having your niche audience, then you're not gonna have the success that you're looking for.
Right. Resonance is king. That's my little quote on it, is resonance is king. Because if the content's crappy, it doesn't matter. If the audience isn't there, it doesn't matter.
Right.
When you have a message that resonates with an audience, there you go.
Right. Totally.
So would you say that, and this is still, we're a good 5 years, I would say, into YouTube being mainstream for everybody because everyone's had a smartphone for 5 years. Everyone can shoot video. And we're still very, very much at the elementary stages, I feel like, for most brands when it comes to YouTube. So what I kind of want to leave us with here today is if you could talk to one CMO or chief content officer, chief brand officer, just listening right now and say, here's one thing I would recommend you do starting next week with YouTube, with content around video. Yeah. Would you tell them to start and if kind of a part B, if they have started, they probably haven't gone very far. So what's step 2, step 1 and 2?
Right. Yeah. I'd say 2 things. Don't just jump into a platform thinking that that's where your audience is. Because here's one of the things that we've definitely learned and I've learned is that every single one of the platforms has a completely different demographic.
Absolutely.
And so one demographic, so if you're on Snapchat, it might not hit your demographic. If you're on Facebook, it actually might not hit your demographic. Mm-hmm. So it just would know exactly who your customer is and start building your platform there.
Mm-hmm.
2, and I really want to answer these questions you're talking about, but I think this kind of wraps this up into it. Okay. So there came a report out a couple weeks ago. I'm trying to remember who exactly it was that sent out the report, but they're actually saying on the subscriber basis, the paid subscriber basis model, is that we're actually going to see a peak out in probably 2019, and where it's going to go flat. And so that flat revenue line is going to probably end up dropping the price of subscriptions from about $7.99 to about $1.99.
Mm-hmm.
So you're going to see things like Netflix, Spotify, all these different platforms that actually have that we pay for start to go flat. So in regards to YouTube, it's going to be the exact same thing. It's going to end up going flat. But what's actually going to start peaking out, and what I call those content platforms, are going to be niche markets.
Mm-hmm.
And so if I could say this to any brand, start finding platforms that aren't that big right now, but are core in your niche market and start developing them now. Because in 2-3 years, maybe 5 years, when those big platforms are still in existence, people are going to be really more drawn to these smaller platforms that can curate to myself versus being on the big platform called YouTube. And so not saying that YouTube's going to go down because it's just such a behemoth that there's just no way it's going to go down anytime soon. Yep. And I'm a big believer in YouTube, but I think that's what the YouTube multi-channel networks are trying to do. And got so big on some of them that they lost the sight. They lost the hindsight of what they were trying to really, really build.
Twitter.
Yeah, exactly. So you talk about publishers a minute ago. So you as a brand are now a publisher. Well, think of yourself more as a multi-channel network, as a content creator. Can you create a brand that you can own that your other brand can actually live on, but you actually might be able to have some smaller companies also bring their brands onto this thing. But you own this piece of content, this piece of property, and it can actually generate quite a bit of revenue. And it gets you to that whole idea that 1,000, 100,000, 1 million dedicated people who love your brand, and you'll see so much more revenue flowing in.
So if I were to sum, because that's what I do, is pick the platforms where your people are actually at, do some research, understand your client. They'll just assume you know the platform, and be you.
Yes, be you.
Because people like people who are being them.
Yes, be you. But I want to harp on this.
Okay.
Find a niche platform that works for you. Okay. Because that is going to be, just trust me, in the next several years, that's going to be key. And so many technologies are coming down the pipeline that are going to disrupt all industries. I mean, you're talking blockchain coming out. For the music industry, that's going to completely take out 2 or 3 major components of the music industry.
Right. Machine learning. It's another one that's being talked about.
Machine learning is going to be a massive thing. So we have these technologies that are going to help us just explode as individual companies and individuals, content creators and brands that we've never had before. That we actually don't need the big guys even more. So like we haven't needed them for a while, but they keep on working themselves back in. And I think that I'm a firm believer in that niche markets are going to be 5 years from now to 10 years from now, niche market's going to be huge.
Yeah, and I can tell you, because I started in SEO, a lot of the long-time successful SEO consultants and trainers and things like that spent a lot of their time on Google Plus when it was young, spent a lot of time at inbound.org when it was in its heyday. The less, Moz's forums, things like that, where they were bigger companies for the industry, but they had small forums, or small, I say small, hundreds of thousands of people, but they were very specific around a very specific subject, and that's really served them well. So to your point, I think that's great. Cool, Kyle. Well, man, I really appreciate the time today. It's some great insight. We'll have to do this again sometime soon.
Yes, please. I really enjoyed my time here.
Awesome, man. Well, we will talk to you again soon, and thanks again.
Great. Thank you, Jake.
All right. Bye-bye.